Hey, Adrienne.
Hi, Jamie. How's it going?
It's going great. I think we were chatting a little bit before this, but it's Wednesday. It's halfway through the week. Cannot
Yes.
complain. We're getting there.
Yes, and I'm in New York City and it's sunny out, so I really can't complain.
Oh gosh, better there than here. We are in Minneapolis, where I'm, and it's a rainy day, and we've come off of a few snowy days. So spring and summer is right around the corner, but not quite here yet. So here we are.
Hoping that it comes soon.
Yes, yes, amen. Um, I am going to let folks join here for a bit. If you are popping on, feel free to say hi in the comments. Let us know where you're coming from. We'd love to say hi. We will kick off here in about a minute, but if you have any questions throughout the event, again, feel free to throw them in the comments. We can see those, so we'll try to get to them as we go along. Hey, Connor. And if not, we'll definitely make sure to follow up with you after the event. Um, yeah, so maybe we can kind of kick it off with some introductions. I have been on a few of these, so if you've joined us before, you probably know who I am, and this is getting old. But my name is Jamie, and I'm the Senior Marketing Manager with Celerity, and I am so excited to be joined by Adrienne. If you want to give a little intro, Adrienne.
Sure. So I'm Adrienne Lucas, and I am the head of diversity and inclusion and strategic partnerships at a advertising nonprofit called the OneClub for Creativity, based in New York City.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and then kind of setting the stage for our conversation here today. We're still in a world where we're seeing a lot of attrition and turnover in the workplace, and more, I think we're finding that belonging has a big impact on those decisions. I read a recent study that found that more than half of employees who left their job in the past 6 months did so because they didn't feel valued by their organization or their manager, or they lacked a sense of belonging. And then, kind of on the flip side of that, high belonging has been linked to a 56% or increase in job performance and 50% drop in turnover risk. So, all that to say, a culture of belonging is obviously incredibly important, but maybe not always executed in the most impactful way. And maybe the best place to start here is um, how we set the stage before someone even takes the job. And speaking to the hiring managers who have an incredible amount of influence and impact. And I'm just curious, Adrienne, like, what would you say are some tips for hiring managers who really, to really set the tone for a diverse and inclusive workplace?
Yeah, everything you said is so relevant and so important because hiring managers are the gatekeepers essentially to an organization. And so, for any hiring managers that are here in the room, I would say the first step is to figure out what your hiring needs are. And so, doing a diversity hiring audit would be critical. So, who is underrepresented at your company? And keep that in mind. It could also be helpful to have employees fill out a survey where they're giving you candid feedback on what it's like to work there and what they feel like is missing from their teams. And so, keeping that in mind, you can also now think about who the ideal candidate is. What are the skills that you want this person to have going into this role? And then also being aware of your bias. We all have bias. No one is immune to it. It is a human trait. And so don't feel like, it's a bad thing or anything to be ashamed of. And instead, empower yourself to learn what your biases are and what triggers them and be mindful of them. And so once you do that and you go into the process, next we can focus on the job description. The
Mhm.
job description is the first impression that a job seeker has of your company. So you want it to be thoughtfully written. You want it to be approachable. You don't want people to say, this doesn't look like a place I want to work for.
Mhm.
You want to also get help. This is not something you want to do by yourself. So it would make sense to form a small diverse panel or even outsource a panel of reviewers who can evaluate that job description and make sure that you're using inclusive language.
Mhm.
And when you do create this job description, do not just throw everything you can think of in there. Be very intentional about the skills and criteria that you're looking for in the candidate because you don't want to intimidate people who may be interested in applying. And something that I read is that women only apply to jobs that they're 100% qualified for versus men apply for jobs, even if they're only 60% qualified for it. So keep that in mind when thinking about what you're asking of this candidate for the role. And of course, gender inclusivity. There are tools such as Textito, or Gender Decoder that you can use to help with that. And then be transparent about salary and benefits. There are some states that will mandate that. New York is one of them. And it is so helpful because women in particular tend not to negotiate. And so having the salary there will help a woman sort of gauge, okay, am I comfortable with this salary? Is this something that I want to ask more for? So those are just some tips that come to mind, and I can keep going.
No, I love that. And I think that those are things like, we here at Celerity also try to keep in mind on a day to day. And I know a lot of the people we work with, our partners do as well. And I think that's all incredibly helpful. And then, looking at um, uh, kind of starting with, I know you said like hiring managers are the gatekeepers to an organization, but another incredibly influential group are those leaders, the CEOs, the presidents, the owners. These are the people who they wield the most power at an organization, but they're sometimes the most removed from the day to day. I'm curious what you'd say like strategies are for this group to help create, grow, and support a culture of belonging.
Yeah, you said it so well. It definitely starts with the leaders of an organization. I believe that all D&I efforts start with the top. And
Mhm.
so I think it's up to leaders to establish what the values are of the company. And it is up to leaders to ensure that each department lives up to those values. Having benefits that promote wellness, flexible work arrangements after the pandemic, and which a lot of us are still actually going through in a lot of ways. People want flexible work arrangements. There may be a
Mhm.
parent who has to pick up a child, and then they can go and log back on to their computer after doing that. So being flexible, having a shared vision of what the company stands for is very important. And something that can help with that is having volunteer days, supporting charities or small businesses, also being heard and having a lot of transparency. So a lot of companies may do ask me anything sessions, which I love that with the
Yeah.
CEO. And also sharing updates in a timely manner. Like I know someone that learned about a merger that her company was involved in via the news rather than her own company. And we
Mhm.
never want that to happen. We always want to feel like we are a part of the family, of
Mhm.
our company culture. And so keep employees up to date on what's happening. Recognition
Mhm.
is also important. So
Mhm.
awards, perks, PTO for going above and beyond. People want to feel valued. They want to feel recognized.
Mhm.
Having an inclusion and belonging council is really important because
Mhm.
that can be a team of well respected people that help promote belonging at the company, and they can organize events, or be a resource for ERGs, employee resource groups. So, definitely great to have. And also making
Mhm.
sure that executive leadership is diverse. Potential employees want to see that they have a future at that company. I know
Mhm.
when I look at a company's website, that's one of the first things that I look for because
Sure.
a company
Yeah.
can have all the splashy language on their website. And then you look
Mhm.
and it's like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
nobody here looks like me. Are they really serious about diversity and inclusion?
Mhm.
Uh, Hybrid workspaces. We now live in a very much so hybrid world, and so are we making sure to include workers who are signing in remotely or who only go into the office partially, and keeping them involved in events and conversations? And then budget. This is something that we don't talk about enough. Making sure there's a reasonable budget for diversity and inclusion, because we can have all of these lofty goals, but we need money to fund it. We need departments that are responsible for executing these goals. And then also having a zero tolerance for discrimination. If something was to happen, we want to see that it's dealt with swiftly so that people know
Mhm.
the type of company they're working at.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, and I think the people who probably play a lot, and affect that a lot are the managers, so everyone kind of, in middle management, which can be a large group of people at a bigger company, and then, kind of a select few at smaller companies, but, those people are often the ones who are creating and then overseeing smaller ecosystems that are really what our team lives in day to day, and they have a really big hand in influencing someone's sense of belonging every day. So, what are the strategies that those people can take? They maybe aren't able to institute, a company-wide initiative, but there are certainly still so many ways that they can impact somebody's sense of belonging.
Yeah, I would say that a manager can promote trust. Psychological safety and trust is
Hmm.
so important. And that's a term that people should be very familiar with. You want to feel like, your teammate can talk to you about things. They want to feel heard. They want to feel seen. So if there's a new initiative that's happening with the team, make sure you're running it by members of your team. Make sure you're listening to people, not speaking over them. Have
Hmm.
team bonding events, even if it's just turning on a movie virtually and everyone's signing in, or doing some type of bingo game or some type of show and tell where people
Hmm.
share who their family is or what they like to do outside of work, where people just feel like, I am not just a robot coming into work and then leaving. I'm a part of a community. People value me. I have a place here. And support ERG efforts. I have experienced, and I've heard of other people who've experienced managers who, let's say there was an ERG meeting, at 1 o'clock, and they're like, well, if you go to this meeting, are you going to be behind with your work? If
Yeah.
someone can balance their ERG responsibilities and their work responsibilities, not only just let them do it, but be supportive of it. This is this person going above and beyond. So, really, really important to support ERG efforts, and also to respect your team members' outside commitments, whether that's picking up a child or being a caregiver for a relative or whatever this person has to do. Be respectful of that. And also have a connected and welcoming onboarding process. When people first enter a workplace and they don't know anyone, it could be one of the scariest feelings. It could
Yeah.
be like starting school for the first time.
Yeah.
Be welcoming, have a lunch and learn with this person, sit and chat with them, get to know them. And that can make all the difference in this person wanting to stay at this company for a long time.
Yeah, I love that, and I manage a team, and I think one of the things that we had talked about that I have found so helpful is just being curious, and not everyone needs you to show up or support them in the same way, so it's not really like a prescriptive thing you can do across the board, but you really need to um, connect with your team one on one, find out what they need, and it's not going to look the same thing, for everyone, and that's the beauty of it, and so just again like staying curious and really caring about them as a whole person versus just what they're doing from 9 to 5 is so so critical. um
I love that.
and yeah, and then I certainly, when I first started in the workforce, like I was kind of under the impression that there was not much I could do to influence or impact um somebody's sense of belonging, or even my own. I felt pretty powerless, and you're kind of just swept away and you're going along with it. But I do think individual contributors, whether you're 2 days or 2 decades into your career, I mean, you can have a big impact on making sure that somebody feels like they belong and your workplace is inclusive. And I know we've talked about a lot of those ideas, but I think you had some great ones about how people who aren't in any sort of leadership position could still help foster that culture of belonging.
Yeah, I would say welcoming new employees. It doesn't take anything. You don't have to be a leader to just be a welcoming presence.
Hmm.
Listening to each other, so not talking over someone. And the other thing we can do is, if someone interrupts that new person when they're speaking, hey, Jamie just said something. Maybe we should circle back to what Jamie said. She
Hmm.
made a great point. Um, Interrupting bias, that's another
Yeah.
great thing that anyone can do and everyone should do. And being kind. This sounds so simple, but it's so helpful and so, so, so impactful. So those
Hmm.
are tips that I would have for individual contributors.
Yeah, I love it. At the end of the day, we're all people. There's certainly different like power differentials at work, but I think that just remembering that and treating everyone with kindness and bringing that, with you day to day is so important and can really be the like most influential thing for somebody. Um, and just kind of coming full circle actually back to the advice you gave for hiring managers. And I mentioned here at Celerity, we have a team of recruiters who work pretty hard to identify and remove implicit bias. And I thought you mentioned a few great tools that I love, Textio and Gender Decoder. to make sure your job descriptions are gender neutral or inclusive. And then training tools. We just used a great one, Harvard's implicit bias test. It can help you understand your personal bias. Like you said, we all have one or many, and things like, gender, race, I think ability, religion, there's so many. Highly recommend. And then another big thing to really help making sure that you're connecting with those people of all backgrounds, make sure that you're staying in touch with conferences or institutions or organizations that help you build that diverse pipeline. We've had a decades-long relationship with a local organization here, the Brand Lab. It empowers young talent from minority backgrounds to launch careers in the creative industries, but there are so many incredible organizations that do the same thing nationwide. We're going to make sure to link to those organizations and then the tools we also mentioned in the comments. But, I know we are coming up on time here, but I did want to give you the space for any final words of advice or insight that you want to share before we close out here.
Sure. I mean, I do have a couple more tips that I can give to hiring managers just really briefly. When it comes to promoting the role, you can advertise it really broadly and don't just rely on referrals. With resumes, there are some companies that will remove applicant identifying information. So that way you're not focused on the school someone went to or their name. Asking questions, tell me about a time you did this. Are you interested in any of the following growth paths? A panel interview. So using multiple interviewers, making sure the website highlights the company culture. With the candidate experience, making sure it's exceptional from start to finish. And then also just recognizing that this is a continuous process, that, you may not get it perfect the first time, and that you'll just have to continue to learn and grow. And also, if you are interviewing candidates and you see, all right, we didn't really hire any diverse candidates here, like what happened? Going back and kind of seeing where your underrepresented candidates sort of fell off in the process, and going back there and really analyzing what happened and making adjustments as necessary.
I love that. I think being reflective and really, digging into your process is so important. And probably not something that many do, but hopefully more and more do. So I love that. Anything else before we close out? I know we kind of covered a lot, so we probably dumped a lot. But I did want to make sure that if there was anything else before we close out, and I can take a quick scan of the comments. But I think we just had some affirmations from Ashley about the long job descriptions, and the people don't exist, quite frankly, which I think is so true. But
yeah, no, this was great. I appreciate you so much for having these conversations. It's not just about talking about it, but doing something. And, this is something we did in 20 minutes and we're able to cover so much ground. So thank you so much to Celerity for doing this. And thank you for everyone who tuned in.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Adrienne. It was such a joy to talk to you, and thanks to everyone who was here today. If you have any questions or want to talk about anything we chatted about, please don't hesitate to reach out, comment, message us on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you. But I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your week. And thank you again, Adrienne. See ya.